This is my budget BMW R20, the hard to come by version with the exposed weld running up the beautifully brushed aluminium tank. However, it didn't always look as good as it does now, and in fact it nearly started out as a complete disaster of a buy. In this video I'll take you through why and what inspired me to choose it as a second bike, how much it cost to buy, restore and upgrade, and what it's like now to ride and to own. In 2024, on the shores of Lake Como, Italy, BMW unveiled their new R20 Concept Bike. They've taken their biggest ever motorcycle engine, the R18's 1800cc air-cooled boxer twin, up to the engine's size another notch to reach a nice round 2000cc, and shoehorned it into a much smaller, lighter and more agile bike. Their main claim being that handling wouldn't be sacrificed on the altar of appearance. This does appear to be quite a tall order given the size and the appearance of the bike, but it remains to be seen. And anyway, since then I've fancied the idea of having something similar. Something with the same metallic and minimalist stripped back look and exposed engineering, possibly a smaller custom boxer. When I'm looking at buying a bike, I start by listing what I most want the bike to do and then work backwards through my list. In this case I was looking for a very different alternative second bike to my main bike, which is a sports tourer, the Kawasaki H2 SX. I wanted a bike for casual and fairly local rides out in the Yorkshire Dales on my doorstep. Something I could quickly jump on, ride up the single lanes to the top of the nearby hill, watch a beautiful sunset and listen to the skylarks on the moors. My H2 SX is as smooth as butter. It's also stupidly fast. And it's very modern in both its tech and its looks. But it's also bloody expensive to fix and reinsure if I somehow low-sided it on some of the random gravel patches that we so often find on our back lanes here in Yorkshire. Ideally, in a second bike I was looking for the opposite. Something cheaper, a budget bike. Something that would be less of a worry on the back roads, something characterful, a big twin possibly with plenty of low down shove, maybe a retro naked, something I like the look of but with lots of character. I knew that the BMW R20 could deliver in this respect, but it didn't really grab me the same way that the R20 did, well not initially, and that's something I wanted to understand, why one grabbed me but the other one didn't. Not long after this I came across the option 719 BMW R20 nineT. It had the brushed aluminium tank and the rear seat cowl with the almost liquid looking clear coat finish, a vivid red frame and a seriously beautiful looking bike. Compared with the R20, it has cleaner lines. It's less busy without the air intake pipe on the side or the bolt-on seat supports. It looks simpler, more together, or more thought out as an aesthetic design, but simpler to the point that in the fully painted versions it looked a bit too conservative, while the brushed aluminium version lifted it out of that and restored some of that raw character. I was now starting to see and understand what it was about the initial impressions I had with the R20 that I liked so much. I think it was the metallic, no-nonsense exposed engineering, the stripped back and minimised visible raw machinery and bare metal of the bike. The 1170 boxer of the R12 and the R20 may seem modest next to the R20's enormous thumping 2-litre engine. But as an engine, the 1200 still offers heaps of performance, enough for the sort of back road riding I was aiming to do. At the time of filming, the option 719 R12 was listed at over 18k, which contradicted one of my primary aims of buying a cheaper bike that I wouldn't be so worried about on the back lanes.
I don't know if I can find my way out.
A month or two later, I saw this silver, brushed aluminium tank BMW R20 at a second-hand dealer's showroom. It popped under the showroom lights and immediately caught my attention. It got me searching, and I looked at some of the project bikes on the Pier City Customs website and other YouTube channels, and I saw how good this bike could look if it was pared down and stripped and tastefully modified. Fast forward 2 months and I'd found one. I'd found one with the weld on the brushed aluminium tank, and I quickly pulled the trigger. But had I been a little bit trigger happy with this purchase? At this point I had a choice. I could sell the bike honestly, knowing I would probably lose a considerable amount of money. I could part exchange it and take a big hit, or I could accept that I'd made a stupid mistake, own it and fix it properly. At this stage, the total cost is around £5,800, and the bike ticks the boxes I most wanted it to. The performance, the looks, the boxer character, the low-down torque and the mechanical feel of the bike for less than a third of the price of the BMW R20 nineT. So, what's she like to ride? Well, I wanted something in contrast to my H2SX. Well, I can well and truly tick that box with a big, fat, indelible black marker.
I don't know if I can find my way out.
Who realistically should buy a bike like this? As a start off, if you want a bike that comes out of the factory coated in proper paint and capable of tolerating European winters, this bike obviously should not be at the top of your list. If you want a bike that's light and super agile, this also probably isn't that bike. If you're looking for all the tech, traction control, a slipper clutch, an IMU, riding modes and so on, This first gen only has ABS. Put simply, that translates into a bike that just feels raw with less things to go wrong. Reviewers will often describe its ride as mechanical and muscular with distinctly analogue character. What they really mean is, don't expect an easy, highly refined or super smooth ride. I have to pay more attention and show more respect when riding this 110 horsepower bike than I do when I'm riding my 197 horsepower H2 SX. Its throttle response can be immediate and, to be honest, quite abrupt if you're not careful. It's cable actuated, and combined with the dry single plate clutch, it gives a direct and immediate transfer of mechanical power, and with no slipper clutch to cover up any sloppy gear changes or poor rev match downshifts, you have to be paying attention. A polished and careful review would probably say, this bike rewards smooth inputs and a relaxed flowing riding style, and every throttle input comes with a sense of movement and personality. Yeah, right. What they actually mean is, start daydreaming and try for a clutchless quick shifter upshift which you haven't got and you'll soon wake up, or twist too much wrist in town in first gear and there's no electronic throttle map to save you. And all of that might sound like a criticism or a negative, but in all honesty, it's actually a positive, because on this bike, you're in the present because you have to be. If I had to describe the ride simply, I'd go with probably unique first. It's planted with moderately relaxed geometry. It pulls well right from the bottom, but it soon runs out of steam. Physically, when you're on it, the bike feels lighter than it actually is because of the low distribution of the weight. You just have to remember that and know that it actually isn't, because when you try to slow down fast, it's got some heft behind it. But to help you out with that, it does actually have heaps of engine braking. Sometimes it feels like too much engine braking. Personally, I'm trying to get used to it. For me, the following is one of the best points. It's a zero pressure bike. If you want to chill, ride slow and just cruise, you just do it. No expectations. So to finish off, I'd basically sum this up as a no bullshit bike, and that's exactly how it feels when you're riding it. As one of the wisest men on earth once said,
that's all I have to say about that.
Well, hopefully that was either interesting or helpful to at least someone. Thank you to all of those of you who have subscribed, and I'll see you in the next one.